I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, May the 2nd. Happy birthday to my sister Sheila. Brought to you in part by Joplin Regional Stockyards. About 6,500 head for the regular Monday feeder cattle auction. They'll start early because it's beginning to get hot late in the afternoon there, and they like to get done. But they've got a special cow and bull sale this Wednesday, May the 4th, and it's going to be a really good sale. They're expecting about 500 head of replacement cows there of all ages, and there'll be a range of quality there too. But also included in that sale that starts at 4:30, that would be after the weigh-up cows that they always sell on Wednesday. But at 4:30 this Wednesday at the special cow and bull sale at Joplin Regional Stockyards, they're having a complete dispersal of a 52-year-old limousine ranch there locally that's been in business ever since they brought limousines over, and they're getting out of the business, selling their seed stock and their core stuff there. But you can, as always, view and bid those sales at dvauction.com, and don't forget that sale Wednesday afternoon. Packer fear, and that's what all your cattle feeders are suffering from. We saw, as you know, we had the Ag Committee hearings both in the Senate and the House this past week, and talked about them in length quite a bit there. Felt like as far as the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, we did really well on the Senate hearing and not so well on the House Representatives hearing. But it's being talked about, so you know we're right here at the cusp. We're getting something done. It's not some of these pipe dreams that some people talk about. You know, we need to do this, we need to do that. No, this is a bill that's been you know, it's up for debate, and it's been at the hearing, and they brought people in, and they had the lawmakers, you know, change their schedules and brought them in. We now had hearings in both departments of Congress there. We haven't just heard anything about when we might put that up for a vote, but we're looking forward to that. We think that we're a shoe-in on the Senate. The one reason that we think we're so good in the Senate is we've just got those real strong senators that are behind this. Senator Deb Fischer, Senator Chuck Grassley, we got Senator Hyde Smith there from Mississippi. We've got John Tester in Montana. All these people understand the problem here and how we need to get this bill done. Not so much in the House do we have any real strong proponents. We do have a couple there, one from Iowa actually, and one from Nebraska there. But you know, we just don't feel as good about that. But we're working on that. We need you to work on that. We need you to call and email your House representative there for the U.S. and tell them that we need this bill. And I'm talking about Packer fear. And in both of those hearings this past week, we had a person that was going to testify there and tell their side of the story and why they were for cattle price discovery and transparency, both at the Senate hearing and the House hearing. And at the last minute, they pulled out because of fear from the Packers. The Packers, you know, got word to them that they didn't appreciate them going up there and showing their support for this bill, and they fear the retaliation from them, and so they didn't come. And I know one of them very well, not so much the other. Of course, they don't want their name out there, but it's a really ridiculous deal there. And of course, then at the House hearing, you had your big four CEOs were there, and committee chairman Scott asked those four CEOs if they knew anything about you know, this Packer fear or them bullying or retaliating against the cattle feeders, and they said, "Oh no, oh my goodness, that's terrible. Never heard anything like that." Any of those guys would fit you for concrete shoes. If their board told them that that's what they needed to do. You know, it's a bad relationship whenever you're raising all these cattle and the Packers know that they're going to get them. Now they kind of collude and they say, well, you take these feedlots and I'll take these feedlots, and you don't get much competition if any at all. But even the few guys that still sell negotiated don't get 4 packers bidding on their cattle. They might get a couple and maybe 3 on a really busy week like we had this past week. But you know, it's ridiculous that you can't even tell your story because of retaliation. I hope you guys have watched John Campbell, my friend from Winter Livestock in La Junta, Colorado, give his weekly talk, and I look forward to that every week, and he does a really good job. And a lot of times he's just kind of poking fun at different things, but it's lighthearted, but he's telling his conservative viewpoint and the cattleman's viewpoint there. And on his last session, he talked in length about the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. He's all for it. You know, he's been around this industry for a long, long time, and he sees it. All your sale barn guys are for it that I know. All of them are. Maybe not if they feed a whole lot of cattle, they won't say it out loud that they're for it because of fear of retaliation. But even the guys that were testifying against the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act and behalf of NCBA or KLA or whoever they were for, they're scared to death of the packers too. I guarantee you they are. They absolutely are. Who would not want to have competition and transparency in your cattle markets? They know that they don't feel that they can get it, so they're scared to death of it. Most of them have a drawer full of U.S. premium beef shares in their desk, so they're basically packers too, and they love the sweetheart deals that they have with USPB. But it's really disgusting whenever you have people that can't really tell you the truth. In fact, I know the leaders of these big corporate feeders down here in the Texas Panhandle, and they will tell me, just between me and them, boy, I hope you guys get this deal done because it would help us. They know that if we have competition in that base price, they all have a base price, then that was going to help them in the long run. How else are we going to have any leverage at all? But John Campbell talks all about how we've got to have competition, how if you've been in and around sale barns, you know that's a cornerstone of the cattle business, is you have to have guys bidding against each other. And if you don't, you have no price discovery at all. But he comes at it from kind of a different angle, and I appreciate that talk he gave, and talks a lot about the competition, and he talks about the opposing bill people's argument of just keep the government out. Well, that's real easy when you're talking to cattle people, because most all of us are very conservative, and that means for the most part we're anti-government interference. And so that's our biggest argue, because whenever you're arguing against transparency, competition, and price discovery, talking about markets, I mean, what leg do you really have to stand on? They talk about these alternative marketing agreements. That's great. You can still have them. We're not outlawing alternative marketing agreements with this bill. It's just keeping them from taking any more. I mean, we've got very, very minimum, less than 10% negotiated trade in the Texas Panhandle. There's plenty of room for AMAs. And that's how come we had to set it so low, is because we have to have room for all the corporate feeders to do their business. We don't want to force them out of business, and we don't want them to have to change the way they do it. We just want the independent feeders, the smaller guys, we want them to have a chance. And we have to preserve this negotiated trade. We know that within 3.5 years we're going to lose all negotiated trade in Texas if we don't get something done here, and this bill would absolutely do it. But John Campbell says, that's an easy way for them to pull at the guy's heartstrings, saying, well, we want to keep the government out. The government oversees everything. We know that they do. The reason that we have to ask the government to come in here and do that is because they did not enforce the original Packers and Stockyards Act rules from over 100 years ago, and this thing's just gotten totally out of shape here. But if you think about it, each one of those big 4 packers is larger and more powerful than the USDA that's going to be overseeing it. So how can you say that you know, we were fearful of the government coming in there? All the government does is they do regulation. Somebody's got to do it. Who else are we going to get to do it? But whose side do you want to be on? Just think about that as a cattle producer. If you're swaying one way or the other, and I know that you're probably getting pressure from the other side, but you know, you want to side up with me and John Campbell and the sale barn guys and your small cow-calf producers and your smaller ranchers and backgrounders and guys like that, or do you want to side up with the big four there that were just so surprised they'd never heard of anything like Packer retaliation or having fear of those guys? All you guys know that. You've heard that. You know, I hear all the time about my guys that have fat cattle to sell, and their packer will tell them that they need to take a tweet down or Facebook post down criticizing the packers. You know, that's absolutely ridiculous for them to have that much control. But let's talk about your board for last week. During all that tumultuous times there, talking about your Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, but it was curious. At the same time, we were having one of the biggest negotiated trade weeks we've had in a long time, as people were looking at that. So, you know, it's very obvious what they do. Let's talk about your live cattle futures. Let's continue to talk about April, which it traded through the week and then ended at the end of the week. But Monday was down 335, and Tuesday was up 90. Wednesday was down $1.50. Thursday was unchanged as it saw what it needed to do to end the week, but then Friday up 340. Well, if you were paying attention, you knew it was going to have to come up a long ways, because our weighted average on live cattle trading negotiated was over 143. If we didn't have that live cattle price negotiated weighted average, how would we know what the market is? I can't understand why people can't figure that out. But 143 plus was your weighted average on live cattle last week. Your April live cattle contract came to fruition. It was mature, it was ripe, and all they could squeeze out, it was 141.90. Now we can level that up on the other side, because people will deliver cattle. If it gets more than $1.50 or, you know, closer than that, they will deliver cattle to keep that thing straight. It's not easy to demand delivery, which you would have thought packers would have done. They would have loved to have bought cattle, especially in the northern plains, cheaper all last week than what the cash price was. But they don't hold long contracts, because they've got these AMAs that completely give them control of the market. But 141.90 to end the week on April, and in the contract was down 55 cents for the week. June live cattle futures 132.65, down 5.77. May feeder cattle, Monday was down 257, Tuesday was down just 57, Wednesday was down 337, Thursday was up 60 cents. April went off the board at 155.92 on Thursday, your April feeders, but I'm talking May, which is our spot month now. Friday was down $1.60, but May feeder cattle contracts ended the week at 156.35. That was down 7.52 for the week. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Now your all-important August is starting to come up now, and it ended the week at 168.27. But you guys remember when it was up in the 180s there, and everybody should have gotten their LRPs secured. Let's talk about your fat cattle trade for last week. Like I said, everybody was looking at your negotiated market, and we just coincidentally had one of the biggest negotiated trade weeks in volume that we've had for a long time. Just through Thursday, almost 117,000 head traded negotiated compared to 93,900 at that point last week, or the previous week, and just 55,800 the same week a year ago. Up through Thursday, didn't have a lot of trade on Friday, but I'll tell you about a little bit of it. But up through Thursday of last week, live sales of steers and heifers was 140 to 148. That was $1 higher. Your weighted average ended up being through Thursday 143.31. It's not going to change much from that. That was up around 30 cents compared to the same time the previous week. Your dress sales were mixed from two lower to two higher, but ranged from 225 to 236 with a weighted average of 232.32, and that was actually up over 40 cents compared to the previous week. So still gain a little bit of ground. Got another week or two of tight market ready supplies, and then we're going to start getting into bigger ready cattle. And I think we're going to see that a lot of the receipts from last week, or the volume, was for the 2 to 4 week delivery, so the packers can kind of set the market up and wash it back as much as they possibly can, which is their right to do if people are willing to sell them cattle out front when they know the market's coming up for a bump. But Friday, Iowa had 1,300 head. They've had 41,500 for the week in Iowa, negotiated sales. Normally it's in the low 30s somewhere, but big. They're wanting those good grading cattle they have in Iowa. I thought you could only get the higher prices for those quality cattle with an AMA. But they're getting it done negotiated by asking more for the cattle, especially when they know that the packers need them right here to start a grilling season. And they sold them from 145 to 147. That's a $5 to $7 advantage to what the Southern Plains was getting when they have nearly no negotiated trade, and then they do it all with the formula deals. Nebraska just had a load on there of some mixed cattle at 232, but they had 35,600 for the week. Kansas nor Texas had any negotiated trade on Friday, but they both had pretty good weeks last week. 23,800 in Kansas and 15,600 in Texas, which is pretty easy whenever you're only asking 140 for the cattle and the guys just north of you are getting 148 and 145 and 6 and 7 very easily. Of course, fuel's making it harder for the packers to buy those cheaper cattle down south. They're still doing it, but it's making it harder for them to truck those cattle north to those northern plants. Box beef cutout values were lower last week, and we didn't expect this to happen so soon, but they've come back. Should see them make a rebound before we get to those early summer grilling holidays. But choice cuts, your weighted average on all of last week's sales, 263.21. That was down $6.37 from the previous week's weighted average. Late Friday sales were just over 260.5, so they were much lower than that weighted average. Select's weighted average was 252.82, down 431 on the weighted average, and your late week sales were just under 248, so it's falling still. Choice select spread of 1039, and a pretty decent movement of box beef cutout values reported last week of 705 loads, but that is very, very watered down compared to how many they actually sell. They do most of that through some type of formula agreements and long-term contracting there. But for you guys in the Texas Panhandle, and that's where I live, I am going to be giving a presentation at the Dev Smith County Ag Day, and that's going to be this Tuesday, tomorrow, May 3rd. It's sponsored by Cody Chandler Insurance, a farmer's insurance agency there. It's going to be held at Barrett and Crowfoot East, or actually I think it's actually going to be in the old Hereford Sale Barn, which is very close to that. But hope to see you guys there. Could be some differing of opinions there, but I'll state the facts so you guys can make your own mind up. Let's talk about your feeder market for last week. Real-time index on DV auction ended the week at 154.05 based on an 800-pound steer. That was down $3.45 for the week. Your cash feeders and your sale barns were $2 to $5 lower. Isn't it nice to be able to see what the market is because we have our feeder cattle so active in our sale barns? But your feeder cattle going right into the feedlot, $2 to $5 lower. Weaned calves were higher and sharply higher in some places, but they're in light numbers there. And what we're seeing green grass fever out there still, even though we've already filled the orders for the big grazing areas. Guys got little patches of grass around and they're looking for something to eat it down. Talk about your sales from late last week. There wasn't very many, and our receipts are getting lighter very progressively. But Fort Scott Livestock in Fort Scott, Kansas, they They had a decent sale, about 1,500 there. Look at their 8 and 9 weight loads of steers there, yearling steers. They ranged in price from $145.5 to $158, which was $2 to $3 lower in the previous week, but still pretty respectable there. Some individual quotes. Bloomington Livestock Exchange in Bloomington, Wisconsin sold 79 head of 945-pound steers at $148. But the best quote that I saw anywhere late last week, and your Row Grow top quote for the day come out of Lexington Livestock Market in Lexington, Nebraska. Sold 100 head, 755-pound steers at $170.75. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.